The moment my ex-husband slid the black metal card across the marble counter, he was still smiling. "Charge everything that is left to this account." Daniel Reed said it as casually as if the balance in front of him were for a cup of coffee, not nearly $100,000. Beside him, his new wife, Vanessa Cole, was still wearing her wedding gown. The diamonds at her ears flashed beneath the chandeliers. Only a few minutes earlier, she had held that same card up for photographs and told everyone that her uncle had secured it through the board of Aurelia Hotels. She called it a founder's black house account card. According to Vanessa, it meant they did not have to stand at a front desk like ordinary guests. They did not have to worry about credit limits, deposits, or anyone questioning what they could afford. She had even laughed and said, "At Aurelia, the price is never the important part. What matters is who is willing to open the door for you." Daniel loved that line. He repeated versions of it all night. The wedding had originally been planned for 120 guests. By dinner, the number had grown to 170. The standard champagne had been replaced with bottles from the hotel's private cellar. The floral team had worked overnight to build a suspended garden above the dance floor. And Daniel had reserved the rooftop lounge for an after-party that had not been included in the original contract. Each time they added something, the hotel printed a supplemental agreement with the exact price. Each time, Daniel signed without reading more than the first line. Someone warned him that the last-minute additions alone had already passed $80,000. Daniel lifted the black card between two fingers and smiled. "It will go to the private account. Aurelia knows who we are." But when the billing clerk placed the card on the reader, a red message appeared on the screen. "Authorization revoked." Daniel's smile froze. "Run it again." The clerk tried a second terminal. The result did not change. Vanessa stepped forward so quickly that the train of her dress caught beneath her heel. "You selected the wrong account. That is a founder-level card." The banquet manager checked the card number, then looked back at them with the same professional expression. "The card is genuine, and Mr. Reed was once an authorized user. However, it is an additional card attached to a private family house account. The primary account holder revoked his authorization 4 months ago." 4 months ago? Daniel turned sharply toward Vanessa. 4 months earlier was the day after our divorce became final. The manager continued. The corporate American Express card listed as the event's payment guarantee had also been charged. The bank had declined the transaction because there was not enough available credit. Then the printer began producing the final invoice. $15,000 remained from the original wedding package. The services added that day came to $83,620. The total amount still due was $98,620. Guests who had not yet left the ballroom slowly stopped talking. Daniel stared at Vanessa. "You told me your uncle arranged this card for me." The color drained from her face. The banquet manager hesitated before saying, "This card has never been connected to Ms. Cole or any member of her family. It belongs to the private house account of the Whitmore family, one of Aurelia's founding families." Daniel looked as though he had not understood the words. "Who authorized the main account?" The manager turned toward me. "Ms. Claire Bennett. That was my name." It was also the name of the ex-wife Daniel had mocked in his wedding speech less than an hour earlier. The woman who, according to him, had only wanted a safe little life and had never understood ambition. When the hotel's general manager first called me, I was on the 28th floor attending a brand committee meeting. The Aurelia Grand Chicago, overlooking the river, was the most important flagship property in our North American portfolio. I had not known Daniel was holding his wedding there. The hotel hosted events every day, and an ordinary wedding booking would never be sent to a board member. The system only alerted management because someone had attempted to use a revoked family account card. The general manager told me that Daniel refused to pay the remaining balance. He insisted the black card covered everything and demanded that the hotel produce the real account owner. I asked one question. "Did he see the prices for everything added tonight?" "Yes." Mr. Reed signed the wedding contract, the wine upgrade, the rush floral order, the guest room block, and the rooftop lounge agreement. Every supplement also states that the founder's house account card is not a discount card and that acceptance of charges depends on active authorization from the primary account. What about the backup card? Declined by the bank. I closed the file in front of me, then followed the contract. I had no intention of going downstairs. Daniel was my ex-husband. Who he married, how extravagant he wanted the ceremony to be, and how much he was willing to pay for appearances were no longer my concern. 10 minutes later, the general manager called again. Daniel was accusing the hotel of changing its rules after the event. Vanessa kept claiming she knew members of the board. Their relatives had crowded around the billing desk, and several guests were recording the argument on their phones. The scene was beginning to disrupt other hotel guests. So I left the meeting. When the elevator doors opened, Daniel was slamming the black card against the marble counter. "I used this for 3 years," he said. "I never paid $1 at the front desk. Now you are telling me it is a worthless piece of metal." The banquet manager corrected him calmly. "Mr. Reed, it is not true that no one paid. The invoices simply were never sent to you." "What difference does that make?" "It means someone else was paying them." Daniel opened his mouth to demand a name, but the general manager had already seen me. He walked over and nodded. "Director Bennett, the committee is waiting upstairs. Would you like us to turn this matter over to legal counsel?" Daniel went completely still. Vanessa's hand slowly slipped from his arm. I walked to the counter and looked down at the card I had authorized years before. Fine scratches marked the surface, but the edges had been polished until they shone. Daniel had clearly treated it as one of his most valuable symbols of success. He looked from me to the general manager. "Why did he call you director?" The general manager answered for me. "Ms. Bennett serves on the Aurelia Hotel's family board. She is also the authorized holder of the private account attached to this card." Daniel's expression emptied one piece at a time. We had been married for 6 years, and he had never known that my grandfather, Richard Whitmore, was one of the founders of Aurelia Hotels. The company had long been managed by professional executives. The Whitmore family's holdings sat inside a private trust. I used my father's last name, Bennett. My mother used her maiden name, Whitmore, in business, and I had never appeared in hotel advertisements or public interviews. Daniel knew my mother's family invested in hotels and commercial property. He had simply decided that meant a handful of small properties. He had never asked enough questions to learn otherwise. When I met Daniel, he had just opened a corporate consulting firm. He did not own tailored suits, a luxury car, or a private office then. At an entrepreneurship conference, he once waited outside a meeting room for 3 hours just to speak to a prospective client. When the man finally appeared, Daniel did not complain. He gave a clear 5-minute pitch and earned a second meeting. That determination was what I loved about him. While we were dating, I told him that my family had invested in hotels for generations. He laughed and said we could hold his future company retreats at one of our properties. I tried to explain more, but he took my hand and said, "I care about you, Claire. I do not care what your family owns." At the time, it sounded romantic. Later, I learned there is a difference between not caring about someone's money and not caring enough to know them. Daniel and I did not have a large wedding. He was trying to land his first major client and refused to spend money he did not have. He also did not want anyone assuming he had married me for connections. We signed the papers at City Hall and had dinner with fewer than 20 relatives and friends. My mother, Margaret Whitmore, spent most of her time in London overseeing the family's European investments, so she had met Daniel only a few times. Aurelia was publicly represented by a professional chief executive, and Daniel never connected my mother to the family behind the company. After our marriage, I did not immediately join the group headquarters. I worked for an independent brand consultancy, and Daniel and I lived in the condominium he had bought with a mortgage. I wanted us to build a life that felt like ours, not one immediately surrounded by my family's name. My mother disagreed with me. She thought Daniel cared too much about the way other people saw him. "Ambition can move a person forward," she once told me. "Vanity makes him treat every offer of help as an insult." I thought she was being unfair. During our second year of marriage, Daniel's company received an opportunity that could change everything. A major client agreed to hear his final proposal, but the client wanted the presentation and signing dinner held at the Aurelia Grand Chicago. The hotel's Riverview conference rooms were often booked months in advance. Corporate events also required payment guarantees and credit card pre-authorization. Daniel called for days and could not secure the right date. I offered to help. He rejected me immediately. "Claire, this is company business. The places your mother knows are not in the same category as Aurelia." I reminded him that I had told him my family invested in hotels. He sighed as if I were embarrassing both of us. "I know. But this client specifically wants Aurelia. Do not try to prove you have connections and end up making me look desperate." I stopped arguing. At that point, Daniel was sleeping 4 hours a night. I did not want the most important presentation of his career to turn into another fight about whether accepting help from his wife made him less successful. The next morning, I contacted Aurelia's private client office. I asked them to create a Founder's Black House account card in Daniel's name. It was not a credit card. It did not make anything free. It was an authorization card linked to my family's private house account. An approved user could skip the usual hotel deposit and bank card pre-authorization. Instead, the user signed the charges to the main account. At the end of each month, Aurelia sent the signed invoices to the account holder for review and payment. Only the authorized user's name appeared on the card. The sponsor's identity remained private. That rule protected family account holders from public exposure. I applied for the card because I did not want Daniel struggling with credit limits and payment procedures in front of an important client. To control the risk, I placed a $100,000 annual limit on his authorization. Every charge also required Daniel's signature. The card had been created for business hospitality, but it was still an additional card on a private family account. The system confirmed the user's identity, signature, and remaining limit. It did not decide for the sponsor whether a dinner or hotel stay was truly business-related. I received a monthly statement. During the first 2 years, nearly every charge matched client meetings, conferences, or corporate events, so I reviewed unusual items without interrogating him about every guest. I also had the hotel move his presentation into the Riverview room he needed. I instructed the staff to describe it as a standard opening caused by a corporate schedule change. I did not want Daniel to feel indebted to me. I believed I was helping my husband. The card arrived at his office on a day Vanessa happened to receive the delivery. At the time, she was Daniel's client relations manager. She regularly accepted important documents and coordinated business events. The outside of the package said only Aurelia Private Client Services. My name did not appear anywhere. Inside was a letter addressed to the authorized user. It explained that the card belonged to a private primary account and that all signed charges would ultimately be paid by the account sponsor. Vanessa did not give Daniel that letter. She placed the card in a new gift box and carried it into his office herself. "You have been worried about the Aurelia booking, right?" She told him she had an uncle in the hotel's private client division. According to her, the man had used his influence to secure the card and the conference room. Daniel never called the hotel to verify her story. That evening, he came home excited and showed me the card. "Vanessa keeps her connections quiet," he said. "But when it matters, she gets things done." I stared at him. "She told you she arranged that card?" "Of course. She even knew which conference room I needed." "Maybe you should read the original letter," I said, "or ask the hotel who the main account belongs to." Daniel frowned. "She just solved a major problem for my company, and you are determined to be suspicious of her. Claire, not everything is about you." I looked at the card in his hand and stayed silent for several seconds. I could have opened my laptop and shown him the authorization request. I could have put the account records in front of him that night. But the presentation was 3 days away. I did not want him to turn the truth into a story about a jealous wife trying to steal credit from a capable employee. I told myself I would explain after the contract was signed. The proposal went perfectly. The client loved the room, the dinner, and the service. Daniel's firm won the largest contract it had ever received. At the celebration, he thanked Vanessa in front of the entire company. He said her relationships had given the business an opportunity it could never have earned on its own. I sat at the edge of the room, watching him raise his glass, and suddenly did not know when the truth could be introduced without sounding like an accusation. I brought up the card again after the project ended. Daniel was preparing for a new round of client meetings. He barely looked away from his phone. "Vanessa handled the paperwork," he said. "You do not need to worry about it." I let the subject drop. It became one of the worst choices I made during our marriage. I thought refusing to claim credit was kindness. I did not understand that silence gives a lie room to grow roots. For the next 3 years, Daniel used that card to reserve meeting rooms, client suites, dinners, and private receptions. Once Aurelia's system recognized the founder's house account authorization, it automatically provided a private concierge, room priority, and detailed guest preference service. Vanessa did not need to know a single senior executive. All she had to do was call, give Daniel's name, and the hotel prepared everything according to the account level. She took services built into my card and presented them as proof of her influence. Daniel gradually came to believe she was the person responsible for his success. When friends praised me for supporting him through the early years, he would smile and say, "Claire prefers a quiet life. Business is not really her world." When clients asked how he always secured Aurelia's best rooms, he would answer with false modesty. "Stay in business long enough and you develop a few private relationships." The invoices for those rooms and dinners arrived in my private account every month. Over 3 years, they totaled more than $200,000. Most were legitimate client events and company expenses. I treated them as my contribution to our marriage and to Daniel's growing firm. I never asked him to repay me. I believe spouses did not need to turn every act of support into a debt. Daniel took my silence as proof that I had contributed nothing. He began attending more dinners with Vanessa and coming home later each week. Whenever I asked where he had been, he told me I did not understand the pressure of building a business. He even suggested I leave my brand consulting job. "Your income does not make much difference," he said. "Taking care of our home would help me more." What he did not know was that I had already begun representing my family on Aurelia's brand committee. I had no public title and no profile on the corporate website, but the projects under my supervision had budgets larger than his company's annual revenue. I still did not tell him. Not because I was testing him. Every time I tried to discuss my work, he redirected the conversation to his own achievements within minutes. Then, 1 year before our divorce, I found an unusual charge on the monthly Aurelia statement. 3 nights in a Riverview honeymoon suite at the Aurelia, New York. The extras included a dinner for 2, a couple's spa treatment, and an engraved bottle of champagne. The note on the reservation read, "Happy 3rd anniversary to US." Daniel had told me he was in Seattle meeting a client. As the primary account holder, I had the right to review every signed invoice. I asked private client services for the electronic records. Daniel had signed the charges. The second guest listed in the suite was Vanessa Cole. Their 3rd anniversary as a couple had fallen during the 3rd year of our marriage. That meant their affair had begun soon after Vanessa intercepted the black card. The most humiliating part was that I had paid for their anniversary celebration. Daniel came home that night, and I placed the printed invoice on the dining table. He looked at it once. His face changed immediately, but he did not apologize. His first question was, "Why are you checking my hotel records?" "Because the bill was sent to me." He stared for a second, then gave a cold laugh. "Did you hire someone to investigate me?" "Claire, when did you become this controlling?" I asked how long he had been with Vanessa. After a short silence, he admitted it. He said Vanessa understood his ambition. She could accompany him to client dinners. She could open doors at Aurelia. She could help him become the man he was supposed to be. I, according to him, wanted an ordinary life. I was not ambitious enough, and I could not keep up. "Vanessa got me that black card when I needed it most," he said. "She makes sure the hotel remembers every detail for my clients." Then he looked at me with something close to pity. "What have you ever done for my business besides complain that I come home late?" I wanted to tell him the card was mine. I wanted to tell him that the hotel group he treated as unreachable was held by my family. But before I spoke, I understood something that changed the way I saw our entire marriage. Daniel had not betrayed me because he lacked information. He had chosen to look down on me first. After that, he accepted any explanation that supported the story he wanted to believe. If I proved my identity that night, his first regret would not be hurting me. He would regret losing access to a more valuable resource. I did not need family shares to convince my husband that I deserved respect. So I asked only, "Have you made your decision?" Daniel did not hesitate. "I want a divorce. Vanessa is a better match for me." The next day, I instructed my attorney to prepare the papers. We had no children, and our shared property was simple to divide. I did not demand repayment for the hotel expenses paid during the marriage. I had approved them while I still considered him my husband. But at 9:12 the morning after our divorce became final, I sent written instructions to Aurelia Private Client Services. Daniel Reed was to be removed from every Whitmore family account. It was not revenge. Any private account removes additional users when a marriage, employment relationship, or other authorization ends. I had no obligation to finance my ex-husband's hotel expenses. I assumed he would discover the revoked card within days. Instead, for months passed without him using it once. Vanessa had spent years protecting the myth of her influence. She told Daniel that founder-level cards should not be used too frequently or they might trigger an internal review. She also believed the card was a permanent business privilege awarded to Daniel and his firm. The original letter only said that a private account sponsor stood behind the charges. It did not identify me. It also stated that the sponsor could withdraw authorization at any time, but for 3 years the main account had never rejected a charge bearing Daniel's signature. Vanessa decided the unknown sponsor must value Daniel's commercial importance, not his marriage. As long as the physical card still carried his name, she assumed the privilege remained active. Daniel believed her. When they decided to marry, Vanessa suggested the Aurelia Grand Chicago. She needed an expensive wedding to change the way people saw her. She did not want to be remembered as the employee who had destroyed her boss's marriage. She wanted to appear as the sophisticated partner who had elevated him into a more powerful circle. Daniel needed the wedding for his own reasons. After our divorce, some long-term clients had quietly questioned the way he discarded the woman who had been beside him while he built his company. He wanted to prove that leaving me had cost him nothing. In his version of the story, Vanessa was more valuable, more connected, and more suited to the successful life he now deserved. The wedding team treated them like ordinary clients and issued an ordinary contract. The original budget was $120,000. Daniel paid a $45,000 deposit when they signed. 1 week before the wedding, he paid another $60,000 as required. The remaining $15,000, along with any same-day additions, would be settled after the event. He also provided a verified corporate American Express card as the payment guarantee. Vanessa tried to use the founder's house account card in place of the deposit and advance payment. The sales manager explained that the private account card could only be presented after the event to request that the remaining balance and approved additions be transferred to the primary account. It could not replace the contract deposit, advance payment, or backup credit card. The manager also explained that all charges depended on active authorization on the date of settlement. Those terms appeared in writing in the contract. Vanessa did not want Daniel to realize she did not understand the card she claimed to have arranged. So she told him the advance payments were merely standard procedure. After the wedding, she said, her uncle would arrange internal credits and refunds. Daniel paid $105,000 from the company's account. He believed Vanessa's imaginary uncle would reduce or absorb the remaining $15,000 and any last-minute charges. Vanessa believed Daniel had just completed a major funding round and could easily pay even if the hotel refused. Daniel never told her the financing existed only as a non-binding letter of intent. His office was leased. His luxury car belonged to a corporate rental program. The cash in his business account was already needed for salaries and suppliers. Vanessa never told him that her hotel executive uncle did not exist. Each of them was waiting for the other person's invented identity to pay the bill. On their wedding day, they pushed that misunderstanding beyond the point where either could escape. Daniel invited almost every client and prospective investor he considered important. During the reception, he placed the black card on the bar where people could see the founder's emblem. A guest asked how he had obtained one. Daniel did not mention Vanessa. He certainly did not mention me. He only smiled. Aurelia makes special arrangements for long-term partners. During his speech, he referred to me without using my name. I spent years trying to make someone who wanted a safe, quiet life understand my ambition. Then he took Vanessa's hand. Eventually, I met a woman willing to stand at my level and capable of opening doors beside me. The guests applauded. Vanessa looked at the clients and investors in the ballroom and became even more determined that the wedding must appear flawless. She decided the flowers at the entrance did not look dramatic enough in photographs. She demanded that the design be replaced with a suspended garden. The floral company quoted $18,000 plus an overnight rush fee. Daniel had just implied in front of several clients that his company's revenue had doubled. He could not admit that the additional cost made him uncomfortable. He signed. Later, Vanessa overheard guests describing the wine list as ordinary. She ordered bottles from Aurelia's reserve cellar instead. The banquet manager told them clearly that the upgrade would cost more than $24,000. Daniel hesitated. Vanessa leaned close and whispered, "My uncle will get us the internal rate when they close the account. All your clients are here. You cannot let them think the company is short on cash." Daniel signed again. More clients arrived without confirmed seats. Vanessa's relatives wanted rooms for the night. One of Daniel's partners suggested continuing the celebration in the rooftop lounge. Additional tables, 16 guest rooms, the lounge rental, late-night food, and extra security were added one by one. Every time, the hotel printed the price on a supplemental agreement. Every time, Daniel signed his name. He watched Vanessa remain calm and assumed she could erase most of the charges. Vanessa watched Daniel sign without hesitation and became more convinced that millions of dollars were sitting in his business account. They encouraged each other's performance while lying to each other. After the last important client left, Daniel finally placed the black card on the billing counter. Authorization revoked. Primary account declined transfer. Backup credit card declined by the bank. The fantasy they had maintained for 4 months collapsed in seconds. Standing in front of me at the counter, Daniel still struggled to accept the truth. He picked up the card. "You gave me this?" "Yes." "When?" "Before your first client presentation at Aurelia." "What about Vanessa's uncle?" "There is no person matching her story in the board, the executive team, or private client services." Vanessa raised her voice. "You're lying. I was the one who got that card." I did not argue with her. The general manager suggested continuing the dispute in a private room. Daniel refused. He demanded that the hotel prove, in front of the remaining guests, that he had not been lying. As the primary account holder, I authorized the hotel to display only records connected to Daniel's own authorization and the charges he had personally signed. The original account request appeared on the screen. Applicant, Claire Bennett. Authorized user, Daniel Reed. The courier receipt showed that the package had been accepted at his office by Vanessa Cole. Private client services also retained an electronic copy of the original letter. It clearly described the card as an additional authorization on a private account. It said all signed expenses would be sent to the sponsor. Vanessa had never given Daniel that letter. The general manager then displayed 3 years of settlement summaries. Proposal dinners. Client suites. Receptions. Corporate meetings. Every charge signed by Daniel had ultimately been transferred to my private account. The records also included the 3 nights in the honeymoon suite at the Aurelia, New York. The room became silent. Guests who had admired Vanessa's supposed connections only minutes earlier turned toward her. One of her bridesmaids spoke first. "You always said your uncle managed Aurelia's private clients." Vanessa's lips went white. Daniel grabbed her arm. "You told me you used your family connection to get this card." She pulled away. "I was the one who handed it to you. You said every hotel arrangement came from you. Because every time I called, they did what I asked. How was I supposed to know she was the one paying?" The moment the words left her mouth, Vanessa realized what she had admitted. She had no relationship with Aurelia management. She had accidentally received a card meant for Daniel, hidden the explanation, and spent 3 years pretending that its built-in privileges were proof of her influence. Daniel's mother looked at her in disgust. So the internal wedding discount you promised was also a lie? Vanessa did not answer. Instead, she turned on Daniel. You said your funding round had closed. Daniel's jaw tightened. This is not the time to discuss company matters. It is exactly the time. She pointed at the $98,000 balance. You told me this wedding cost less than 1/4 of your annual bonus. You said the company had plenty of cash. Why did the backup card fail? Daniel's embarrassment turned into anger. If you had not demanded new flowers, different wine, and the rooftop lounge, the bill would not be this high. You told me not to look at prices. Because you said your uncle would handle them. Then why did you sign every agreement? You wanted the clients to think you could afford it just as much as I did. Their voices rose. The banquet manager placed the supplements across the counter. $18,000 for the suspended garden, signed by Daniel Reed. More than $24,000 for the cellar wine upgrade, signed by Daniel Reed. The extra tables, 16 rooms, rooftop lounge, late-night catering, and security all listed clearly, all confirmed with his signature. The manager spoke in an even tone. Whether the founder's house account card is active does not change Mr. Reed's responsibility as the event contract holder. Aurelia never promised a free event or an internal discount. One of Daniel's long-term clients asked quietly, "Did your funding actually close?" Daniel did not answer. His business partner, standing nearby, looked increasingly alarmed. He had not known Daniel was publicly speaking as though a financing transaction, still under negotiation, had already been completed. Vanessa saw the partner's face. The funding never closed, did it? Daniel glared at her. Stop talking. The office is rented. The car is rented too, isn't it? I said stop. What about the ring? Is that financed as well? Daniel said nothing. Vanessa laughed. There was no joy left in the sound. You married me because you thought I had access to hotels and investors. Daniel's voice turned cold. And did you marry me because you loved me, or because you thought I was already rich? At least I did not use money my ex-wife was paying and call it my own success. At least I did not steal someone else's card and pretend it was my family connection. Vanessa pointed at the black card in his hand. You used it for 3 years and never once seriously asked why it worked. You loved the lie too much. You wanted to believe I had influence because it made you feel important enough to deserve special treatment. That was the sentence that broke Daniel. He knocked a champagne glass from the counter. It shattered against the floor. Guests stepped back. Some lowered their phones. Others raised them higher. The couple who had exchanged vows less than an hour before began arguing about who was responsible for every bottle of wine, every flower, and every hotel room. The wedding meant to prove their success became a public audit of everything they did not own. Daniel looked around at his clients, relatives, hotel employees, and business partner. His face burned red. Then he turned to me. For the first time that night, his voice softened. Claire, restore the authorization. Just for tonight. I will repay you. Restore it under what relationship? His mouth opened, but no answer came immediately. We were married for 6 years. And during those 6 years, I paid expenses and protected your dignity because you were my husband. I looked at the card. We have been divorced for 4 months. You knew we were getting married here, he said desperately. You should have warned me that the card no longer worked. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. I canceled the authorization the morning after our divorce became final. You carried a private additional card you had not used for 4 months into my family's hotel to marry the woman who helped destroy our marriage. And you believe I had a duty to warn you that I would not keep paying. His face shifted between anger and humiliation. I did not know Aurelia was connected to you. I told you my family invested in hotels. You never said Aurelia. Because every time I tried to explain, you informed me that my family could not possibly operate at this level. He fell silent. While we were dating, Daniel had said he did not care about my background. After we married, he treated his ignorance as proof that he was noble. Once his company began to grow, he preferred believing in an Uncle Vanessa had invented over listening to the wife who had stood beside him for years. The truth had not been hidden as deeply as he wanted to believe. He had simply never considered me important enough to understand. I turned to the general manager. Proceed under the contract. Give them until tomorrow afternoon to arrange the funds if legal approves it. The Whitmore family account will not accept any part of this charge. Then I turned to leave. Daniel followed 2 steps. Does watching this happen to me make you happy? I stopped. No. I looked back at him. I am simply no longer cleaning up your disasters. That night, Daniel paid part of the bill with personal credit cards and called his mother for a loan. Aurelia's legal department agreed to convert the remaining balance into a short-term payment agreement, but required his vehicle and company receivables as security. Only then did Vanessa learn how fragile Daniel's business really was. The funding he claimed had closed was only a non-binding expression of interest. The office, luxury vehicle, and much of his expensive image were rentals, leases, or installment plans designed to impress clients. Daniel finally learned that Vanessa had no relatives in hotel management. Most of the investor network she claimed as her own came from customer contact lists and names she collected at public events. Vanessa did not go home with him. Still wearing her wedding gown, she left in her parents' car. Before she drove away, she removed her ring and placed it on the stone edge of the hotel's fountain. 6 weeks later, she filed for divorce. Her attorney accused Daniel of making material misrepresentations about his financial condition. Daniel accused her of inventing family influence and using those lies to affect both his marriage and his business decisions. Neither of them wanted to mention me in public. To mention me was to admit that the wealth, influence, and status they had celebrated were built on years of my silence and support. The video from the billing desk still spread online. The first major damage was not to their new marriage. It was to Daniel's company. Several clients reopened their contract reviews. The business partner who heard Daniel imply that the financing had closed demanded complete access to the firm's true cash position. 2 projects were paused. A senior employee resigned. Daniel had spent years turning expensive locations, leased cars, and special treatment into proof of credibility. Once people learned that much of that treatment had come through his ex-wife's private account, the image stopped functioning as trust. 2 months later, he came to Aurelia headquarters to see me. He was not wearing one of the custom suits he once loved. He had on an ordinary shirt, and he looked as though he had aged several years since the wedding. He said the company was running out of cash. Partners wanted early payment. The bank had reduced his credit line. He wanted me to make a public statement that the incident at the wedding had been caused by a technical problem in the hotel account system. 1 sentence from you, he said, and the clients will stop questioning me. I set down the document I was reading. It was not a technical problem. Claire, we were married for 6 years. Exactly. That is why I know you are not asking for the truth. You are asking for another person to absorb the consequences for you. His voice dropped. I honestly did not know those resources came from you. You had chances to know. I met his eyes. You did not want to believe I was capable of helping you. In the story you told about yourself, I had to be ordinary so your success could belong entirely to you. Daniel was silent for a long time. At the door, he asked one final question. If Vanessa had not taken the letter, would we have been different? I shook my head. The card exposed her lie. It did not create your choices. You chose not to listen when I spoke. You chose to treat support as your own achievement. You chose to betray me, and then you chose to belittle me to justify it. Without that card, you would have found something else that allowed you to believe you deserved everything and owed gratitude to no one. After the door closed, I asked my assistant to continue the presentation for Aurelia's next quarter brand plan. We were preparing to open a new property on the West Coast, and the group-wide brand modernization project I led was entering its final stage. For years, I had made my own world smaller to protect my marriage. I thought that refusing credit, avoiding attention, and keeping quiet would earn respect. I finally understood that someone who respects you does not need to know your net worth before treating you well. Someone who loves you does not treat your silence as permission to keep taking. The founder's black house account card had never erased a bill. It had only hidden the person paying it. I had once been willing to stay behind the scenes because Daniel was my husband. When the marriage ended, I did not take away a privilege that belonged to him. I ended my obligation to pay for the consequences of his life. I gave him access, and he called it success. Vanessa stole the credit, and he called it love. In the end, an inactive card was not what destroyed their wedding. The wedding fell apart because, once no one else agreed to pay, they finally discovered they had fallen in love with nothing but the value each of them had pretended to possess.